for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled today is author Peter Elbling and author Lanie Denslow. Lanie is also a professor at FIDM, so we're going to get some tips from her. Author Peter Elbling was born and raised in London.
Sure, correct.
But he sought his fame and fortune in Canada. And when he got there, you started some kind of group that actually did bring you some fame and fortune.
That's true, yes. I was the co-founder of a group comedy team called the Times Square 2.
How did that happen?
God, that's a long time ago. I ran into a gentleman who was a very strange comedian called Michel Choquette, and it turned out we both had a love for 1920s songs. We just both happened to know a song called "I Wish I Could Shimmy Like My Sister Kate."
Oh, please!
I'm serious.
Doesn't everybody know that?
Well, we were the only two in this little town in Calgary.
Oh, that's.
And from that came, for some reason, we started then exploring other 20 songs. And we started working out a routine, sort of like Laurel and Hardy doing vaudeville. And then everybody said, you've got to go to Hollywood to make your fame and fortune. So
you left Canada?
We left Canada, yes, where I'd originally gone, very quickly to come to Hollywood.
What was it called? I forgot.
The Times Square 2.
Oh, the Times Square 2.
Right.
Then you came, you were on Johnny Carson, you were on all the late night shows.
Oh, that's right. We did a lot of college concerts. We did a lot of variety shows for about 5 or 6 years until it sort of ran its course around 1970, and then we split up, and I became an actor for the next 20 years.
And you were in San Francisco.
I was part of the committee.
With the Improv.
That's right, the committee, and I went to Chicago, and for a short while I was part of the Second City.
I know, that was so great, all of that stuff.
It was a wonderful time. It was a wonderful time.
In the 70s and 80s, you started acting, you
yes.
said. So it was on stage or no?
Oh, on stage. Here in Los Angeles, I worked a lot at the Music Center.
Oh, you did?
Oh,
doing
yeah,
what?
Sure. Doing Shakespeare. With Stacey
Were you
Keach.
classically trained?
No, not at all. Not at all.
The Mr. Comedy from Canada?
I was, no. I did a lot of the clowns, the Shakespearean clowns, which I was well trained for because of the comedic background. You know.
And also improv, San Francisco.
Absolutely,
and all
sure.
Oh, that's great.
Sure. So I did that.
And then you did TV?
Then I did TV and films. And
Taxi and Cheers.
Laverne and Shirley, all those things, yeah.
And what kind of roles did you play in those things?
I played a lot of immigrants.
Did you?
Yes.
You mean with an English accent?
Well, no. I played every type of, I played everybody from sort of east of Germany onwards.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. And
did you have long hair?
I had long hair in those days, sure. Didn't everybody? Sure, I did too. You know. And then around 1990, I'd always been writing because I produced and directed a late night stage show.
Satire?
That's right.
What was that about? I kind of remember that.
I felt.
kind of remember
Yeah, well, it's 20 years ago. I barely remembered it too. There were a lot of friends of mine who were ex-members of Second City in the committee, and we felt there wasn't a lot of good political humor going on at the time. And this was just about 1980 when Reagan was coming into office. So we did a late night show, which was written, one show at midnight called the Hollywood Primary. And we have wonderful actors and writers. And it was just, I'd always wanted to do a late night cabaret with big tables with white tablecloths and all that.
Is that
sort of
how
thing.
It ended up?
That's how it was, yeah. We did that for 1.5 years.
And you were kind of ahead of the satire game, really.
I produced and directed that, you know.
But, I mean, you were doing it before
yes,
Saturday Night Live, right?
Well, yes. Well, the committee and the Second City were very satirical, you know. And around the same time, I also did a book with some other people called The 1980s, A Look Back.
Oh, tell me about that. I don't understand it. It says, one of the bestsellers, it says, The 1980s, A Look Back, written in 1979.
Exactly. We wrote it in 1979.
I don't get it.
Well, we had pretended, everybody was writing books about the 70s because they just finished. And I said, well, why don't we write one about the 80s, as if it's already happened.
Ah, that's it.
You know, so we were looking back from 1989 backwards. And in fact, we predicted a lot of things. I mean, a lot of things that happened,
Wait.
you know.
When did you write it? You wrote it?
So we wrote it in 1979. We wrote it in 1979, but we said this happened in 1983, or
Oh,
this
I
happened
see.
in
I see.
1987.
Okay.
So in fact, it was sort of predictions, but written in the past tense.
This was really difficult for me. I couldn't understand what that was about.
It was difficult for us too, because we had to invent a whole world that hadn't happened yet.
But what were some of the things you said in it?
Oh, let's see. Oh my goodness. We said that, okay, in 1979, we said that kids would, in 1987, I think it was, the kids would be able to divorce their parents, which in fact came true.
Oh, you did. That was
Oh.
just a comedy thing at that time.
Oh, yes, it all was, you know. So there were quite a few things like that that actually, if they didn't exactly happen, but a lot of them were very similar.
That's very funny. And then you wrote a sequel.
Then we wrote
in
a sequel.
1990s.
1990s, to look back, that's true.
And you
know.
wrote that in '89?
We wrote that in 89, yes.
Did those things are probably still happening?
Oh, yeah, I keep, every now and again, I look in the paper and I say, oh, we predicted that. Oh, we thought that
Does it
was
come to
Oh,
life?
yeah, sure, sure.
Well, I'm glad you clarified it because I didn't understand when I was reading your resume and I'm going, what kind of, what is this?
I'll bring a book by you.
Oh, I'd love to see
Sure,
that.
sure.
One of the things that you really made you known, I mean, I think people knew you in the writing field and in
Right.
your acting part, but Honey, I Blew Up the Kids.
That's true, yes. That was, now we wrote that before Honey, I Shrunk the Kids actually happened.
Is that right?
Yes, so, and you know, it was
But
on,
it didn't come out that
it
way.
didn't come out that way, no. It was bought and made into the sequel to Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Is that right?
Yeah, so
And
we were
what
very
did
fortunate.
what ideas did you come up with?
In terms of, in that film?
Yeah, that were kind of bizarre.
Basically, that a giant kid, you know, he's made into a giant by his professor, unwillingly, and that he picks up cars and puts them in his mouth, and he parades around, and he's a terrible menace. But nobody can do anything because it's a child. You know?
I see.
Nobody wants to hurt him. You know?
That, Honey, I Blew Up the Kids, led to a children's book. I
That's right.
guess, did
You
it?
know my whole history.
I'm
I'm
here
amazed.
I'm here to tell it, but was that the one that's published by Permanent Press?
No, that was published by Viking.
That was published by
Yes.
Viking. What was it?
That was a little children's book called Aria.
Oh, yes. I wanted you to tell me about that.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. Aria, let's see. Aria
Was it about music?
No, actually it wasn't. Aria was about a little girl who had no voice.
Oh, it
And
was
so
about music.
In a sense, yes, that's true. That's
it's
true.
Sweet.
She had no voice, and so she couldn't talk to the kids in her village, so she befriended all the birds. Because she could only make sort of weird little sounds, she couldn't speak. And so all the birds befriended her because she could imitate them.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, it
Thank you,
sounds
thank
so
you.
sweet.
And then, unfortunately, what happens is that some people in the village steal birds because it takes place in a mythical country in South America. And they follow her, and they see all the birds gathered together, and so they come and steal them to send them away, which of course makes the birds distrust her.
Oh, because they think she's...
Because they think she led them. So in the end, what she does is she goes around releasing them from the various traps. And then, of course, the men are angered by her, so they pursue her. And at the last moment, when she has nowhere to go and there's a cliff in front of her, she just trusts a God, and she jumps over the cliff, and the birds come and pick her up and take her away.
How beautiful.
Isn't it?
Oh, it's so beautiful. And you were talking about this mythical country
Yes.
that you made up for her.
That's correct.
You also made up some other mythical things. That's
That's
where
true.
Permanent Press
That's
comes
where Permanent
in.
Press comes in, yes.
Uh-huh. And we have this book that's called The Food Taster
Correct.
by Ugo De Fonte. Whoever Ugo De Fonte is, tell us about him.
Ugo De Fonte was a peasant who lived in a mythical town called Cossole.
Another
The
mythical.
right, which is in a little area where three provinces in central Italy meet: Tuscany, Umbria, and the Marche.
That's
And it's
made up, right?
Yes. Well, no, those three exist.
Those three exist.
Yes,
yeah.
and there was this little town, village called Cossole, which was wiped out by earthquakes. But unfortunately, I managed to find a manuscript that this peasant, Ugo De Fonte, left, which is the story of his life and how he became a food taster.
I read that part. It was great. I did. But then how did you put yourself into it?
Well,
This is another thing. I think you've got like this mind that's going like this all the time.
yeah, that's true. That's true. when I first got the idea, I just did so much research about Italy and about the time and about the food and the poisons and everything.
Yeah, how did you? Were you researching it before you wrote the book?
No, I started writing the book and then I realized I had no idea what I was doing. So I spent many, many lonely weekends in the UCLA library.
I see.
Finding all the research there.
So how does Ugo taste the food? I mean, how do you trust a food taster?
I'm not really sure. I can only go by what he wrote.
What did he say?
What did he say was that when the food was brought to the table, the plate was passed to him, and he would try out a little bit, and if it was okay, which it was most times, but not always, he would then pass it on to the Duke.
Oh, the big plate would come.
Yes.
He wasn't tasting in the kitchen.
No, but what he did have was spies in the kitchen to make sure that no one tampered with the food.
I see. The Duke had spies.
No, Ugo had spies.
Ugo, you had spies.
Had spies.
Because because if they tampered, then you'd be gone.
Exactly.
I mean, Ugo would be gone.
Ugo would be gone. So any meal could be his last.
What kind of food did they eat?
That's very interesting. They ate everything. They ate everything because they had a completely different relationship to nature than we do now. At that point, nature was an adversary. It's not something to be preserved as we think of now. So they ate the usual goats and cows and chickens, but they also ate moles and hedgehogs and swans and anything that they could cook.
Oh, they did.
Not everything tasted as good as chickens and cows and goats.
And Ugo had to eat them all.
Ugo had to eat them all.
I see. Does he actually sit at the table with the Duke?
No, he's not.
Oh, he doesn't?
No,
What does he do?
No, he stands back a little bit behind the Duke, and the food is passed to him, and he samples a little bit, with great apprehension, and then he passes it back to the Duke.
Is it kind of mafioso in a way?
Well, you could say that the dukes who were despots in the Middle Ages, the descendants of them sound horribly like mafioso, yes.
In a way,
in a way,
because you think about people worried about eating their food. I
mean, it's very true. As a matter of fact, this weekend in the LA Times book review, there was a review about a woman who'd spent some time in Cuba, and Castro came to eat with her because she was the wife of a well-known person. And Castro's food taster came that afternoon and spent the entire afternoon in the kitchen watching her prepare the food.
But so he stayed there like a guard, too.
Absolutely, sure. Absolutely. So they still exist today, every now and again. Anybody who thinks they're going to might be poisoned will have a food taster.
That's really interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Is there a professional group of food tasters?
No. As a matter of fact, though, Ugo, at one point when he feels very alone, wants to start a guild, because there's guilds of weavers and goldsmiths, and he wants to start a guild of food tasters.
Well, that's what I would think. You
Yes.
could lead the group.
No, I'm not sure that's something I want to do.
I thought it was great when we came on the set and you talked about the lemons.
Yes, that's true, because lemons, in the cookbooks of the day, lemons are given more space than any other food, because they were not only used to add taste to everything, but they had great curative powers, and they were just very, very highly valued.
Well, I'm so glad we had lemons for you today.
Well, I feel very good having them
and
here
I'm
around
so
me.
glad that you were here with us,
Thank
Peter
you.
Elbling, which
Thank
is
you.
a very difficult name to say.
Thank you for getting it right.
And the food taster, taster,
Yes.
taster,
Similar.
food
sure.
taster is fascinating read.
Thank you.
I'm loving it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for being with
My
us.
pleasure.
Don't go away, because we'll be right back with Lanie Denslow. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with author Lanie Denslow, who was born and raised in Seattle. She earned a Bachelor of Arts from Antioch College and attended the International School of Protocol in Washington, D.C. She's the director of Working with Americans. She is the director of Working with Americans: How to Build portfolios, that group? What is that?
I'm actually the International Director for the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising.
Well, what does that have to do with making profitable business
relationships, the book Working with Americans?
Yeah.
Well, in my job, I can see what it does when people don't understand each other, and it doesn't lead to good business relationships.
Well, let's start again.
Okay.
Let's say Lanie Denslow is the author of Working with Americans.
Right.
How to build profitable business relationships.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I did
It's
it
fine.
wrong.
It's not a problem.
So now we can talk about it's a Prentice Hall business book, which is a
Right.
very specialized area, right?
Yes, it is, and it was very exciting for me that Prentice Hall decided to publish this book.
Do you use it as a textbook?
I'm beginning to use it as a textbook. We're using it in our international business class, but more it's really aimed for the business person to pick up and read as they will.
I did read it last night, and I thought it was interesting that some of the things I thought, well, why do they have to know that? But I'm sure they do have to know that. What did you study in college? Let's build some background to how you got to this book.
At Antioch, I studied business, but actually I have a master's in international business and an MBA from Pepperdine. And part of that was taught in Paris. So we had the overseas experience as part of the
Oh, that's
school.
why you spent. Did you learn how to speak French then, or
I
did you know
did.
before?
I'd studied when I was in high school off and on, and then it was part of our curriculum.
Oh, was it almost like a requisite to be literate and
Oh, yes,
literal, illiterate?
To get your degree, you had to pass a test in business French by the French Chamber of Commerce.
Is that right?
Oh, yes.
How long were you there?
Almost a year.
Wow. So they gave French courses, I guess, during that?
We had French courses here at Pepperdine in Malibu, and we had French courses there. And
That's interesting. When you were working, or when you were going to school in Washington at the protocol school, who goes to that? Do diplomats go to that school?
no, not diplomats, but people who want to work either with diplomats or the business community, helping them learn how to be appropriate in whatever environment they find themselves in.
So everything has been business oriented.
Absolutely.
Every part of your background and your career has been business oriented, not politically driven or
No. No.
So you did learn how to work with Americans because you've been in these programs.
Right, and partly because I am an American and have worked with people who aren't, I've been able to see the differences.
And as the international director at FIDM, which is Fashion Institute of Merchandising,
Design and merchandising.
Design and Merchandising.
We have a long name.
In Los Angeles.
Right.
A great building. I think the building
Thank
is
you.
beautiful. What do you do in that capacity?
Well, the primary part of my job is working with short-term study abroad, which is all our international study tours, exchange programs, special programs with schools in the United Kingdom, in France.
You send your students there? Is that the exchange
We do
type of thing
exchanges,
you
right, and we have students come here.
Oh, I see. Are they all in fashion?
No, our students are fashion design, merchandising, visual communication, interior design. We grant degrees in 11 different majors.
Oh, you do?
Oh, we do.
Are there branches of this school other than
Yes,
European?
no, well, we're in San Francisco, San Diego, and we just opened a new building in Irvine.
Oh, that's great. And do you go to all those schools?
I do. I'm very fortunate. I get to go to all the different campuses and overseas. I have a perfect job.
You do have a great job. And so coordinating all of this and being a part of the international business
Right.
group, why did you have to write a book if you're lecturing to people all the time?
Well, because we wanted to share with other people. We think it's important that people know about Americans in a different way. And so we wrote the book.
Well, what do people have to learn? What do people have to learn to be? I'm going to go through the points that you
Okay.
will talk about, but just off the top of your head, what do foreigners have to learn about our business relations?
I think the first thing to learn about is that what we call the clock is king. Americans are focused on time and schedules, not on people.
So that's one of your points. That's one of the tips
Right.
that you make. There's so much in the book. I know there's a lot of humor. You tell little
Thank you.
jokes, which I think are very funny. They're like, well, we know that's a joke. And then I thought maybe other people don't.
Correct. Humor is one of the things that it's hardest to translate from one country, one culture to another.
And how does culture play a part in this business relationship?
Well, the way we use culture is everything that you do and think. It's how you know the world is supposed to be, as opposed culture as the sculptor.
In that respect, but you do use the idea of like cultural slang, say. Do you address that?
Oh yes, the differences in language. One of the great quotes is Americans and the English are two people separated by a common language. And
Exactly.
and how confusing it can be, and how it plays in business where people then think they have an understanding and don't.
The other thing is each country has their own, say, sports.
Oh yes.
And that should be a part of it too, is it?
Oh yes, because we talk about things you talk about, and that until this year, Americans were sort of oblivious to things like the World Cup, which for every place else in the world is the most important sporting event.
So do you address those issues? Have you addressed those issues?
We talk about that in the book, both in an issue of awareness and topics to be able to bone up on before you go someplace new.
That's what I was wondering. Is there like a little list of things if you're going out to dinner with some new business associates, what you're supposed to do?
We have a chapter that talks about conversational topics.
Good, like
And
theater maybe?
And what time is dinner, and what topics are okay and which are taboo.
Oh, what do we taboo with?
We don't-
Cigarettes we have a problem with, right?
Well, using them, not necessarily talking about them. But we have taboos about, first of all, arguing. We don't like dissension. And we don't talk about politics, religion, or sex, or actually money with people that we don't know well.
So that's the first thing you'll teach a foreign group to not do when they come to America to do business, or if they're in Europe and doing business
Exactly.
with Americans. Now, I have a list because you gave these 10 tips, and let's talk about, you already talked about the clock is king.
Right.
What about you look wonderful, darling?
Well, that touches on today's very complicated issue of what do you wear. And so we tell people, no matter where you come from, you probably have to ask what's appropriate business attire.
So that's okay to ask.
Even Americans today have to ask.
They still do. And it is, right? People still
Absolutely.
do ask that.
And it's more complicated now, whether you're going to Apple Computer or Wells Fargo Bank, two very different dress codes.
Well, why would that be different? How would,
Well, if you go to Apple, you can probably wear shorts and a t-shirt.
and you wouldn't be
You'd
looked
be
as
okay.
unprofessional?
Oh no, my son-in-law works there. He says people love to come there because they can be casual.
Oh, okay.
If you go to Wells Fargo Bank, we're back to the traditional coat and tie.
I see, okay. So that's, you look wonderful. What about, what's the bottom line?
That's our impatience, our directness. Americans are famously direct, and we want to move right from hello, how are you, to what's the price of your product and when can it be delivered.
Exactly, we don't want to waste any time.
We don't want to bother getting to know you, we just want to know about doing business.
And how is that accepted?
It can be very shocking for people, and people coming here or doing business with Americans for the first time are startled and put off because they perceive it as unprofessional and impolite.
That's what I would think. What about let's do lunch? My favorite.
That's our sort of hug you on the way out, tell you in a way that we really like you, but we don't have time to get to know you.
We don't want to do that. These are things we shouldn't be. Or
Well,
these are things we do,
These
right?
are things we do. If I do that to you, you know that I mean I like you, but I'm busy.
Exactly.
Somebody else is standing by the phone waiting for me to call. It can be a problem.
So you explain those things? These
Yes,
things are explained?
absolutely.
I say, okay, let's make it my way.
Oh, we love choices, and we think we should have choices. My favorite example is
Yes.
Starbucks.
All right.
Think of all the ways you can have a cup of coffee.
I see. So they have a lot of choices, and we give people a lot of choices. Okay. Plan, plan, plan.
Well, Americans, because they're so focused on time, want to plan everything. 5-year plans, personal plans, career plans. They bind them in books, write them down, put them on the shelf.
Something that looks good.
Organized, scheduled.
And does that go along with guides are good?
It is part of guides are good because we use guides, which everybody else calls consultants, attorneys, consultants for everything, to help us develop the plans, to know what we need to know so that we make good plans so we don't make mistakes.
So these tips are really great. These tips are good for everyone. They're not just for foreign businesses coming here. These are really good in our own social situations.
It can be true, and it's also a good way for Americans to sort of look in a mirror in a way and see how other people perceive us, know what surprises them.
That's good too. What about do it now? Do it now.
That's our opposite of planning. That's our opportunistic streak. Let's find an opportunity and grab it and do it right now, even though it might not fit with the plan. Somebody has called it our ready, fire, aim approach to business.
Even if it doesn't fit. And before we go, just because I think it's so funny, your last point was hooray for our team.
We are very sports driven, but the hooray for our team really touches this idea that we're all together, we're all equal. And Americans are founded on the idea of equality, and we believe we're all equal.
So that's hooray for our team?
Our team.
Well, hooray for our team today. You really did a good job.
Thank you.
Are people understanding things? Because it looks like it's written very easily in a point by point.
We think so. The feedback we've gotten for people who've read the book said they enjoyed it and they learned things.
Good. That's what we want, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you, Lanie Denslow.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
For being with us today. And thank all of you for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles. And we'll see you next time. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 917. Bye.